I am now.
Okay, good. Okay, so hello everyone. Well, who we do have here. Um, Today we're going to be talking about benefits. We did have a guest speaker from Covenant who was the um, expert on all things benefits, but she had a death in the family, so kind of last minute, so she had to cancel. So we're just going to make do here with what we have. Um, we're going to be doing just some basic where we're going to go through introductions, market update, general information, discussion, but we don't really have any new people here today for introductions. So we're just going to skip through that and get right to the information. And Joj will start with our market update.
Okay, it's been a wild month since we met last. There was hopes that stimulus would be passed, but that was delayed as Republicans pushed to get Amy Barrett into the Supreme Court. Um, and then the election, which was called by a couple news outlets on, I think that was Sunday. But there will likely be a legal battle that ensues in the next weeks and maybe months. COVID numbers continue to hit daily case records. And then just yesterday, Pfizer or Pfizer, however people pronounce it, showed their vaccine was 90% effective, which was pretty big news. So if you want to go to the next slide, Anna. Just a quick COVID update. So cases have been absolutely surging in the last couple weeks. Same trend is seen in Michigan. I think Covenant went from 20 patients to I think we're at 130 now. Our previous high was actually 86. So it's now peaking and continues to hit new highs every day. But the new deaths have been pretty steady. I think we've figured out how to treat it somewhat. It's creeping up a little bit there towards the end, but um, definitely shows better treatment, and people are more knowledgeable on how to manage the symptoms and whatnot. So this is the same graph we showed last time, going from the start of the year until now. I added a couple flags on there. At the very bottom, that's where stimulus was approved. And you can see the surge the market's been on since then. Um, Apple, surprisingly, they reported earnings along with many other companies that week, and almost every company beat earnings, but the entire market saw a huge decline. I think Apple was down like 5% that day, as well as a lot of other tech companies. Um, and some people attributed it to profit taking, others attributed it to they thought companies would be beating earnings by a wider margin, so that's where they saw the drop off. Um, then there was election day, so a lot of people were guessing there'd be high amounts of volatility going into the election, which there's some pretty steep changes there. But people thought it would drop a lot more going into the market because uncertainty. But it's actually rebounded pretty hard since election day, and I think Wall Street is um, liking the prospect that the Senate will remain under Republican control with the presidency being Democratic. Um, they're saying stimulus will likely be passed, but not a lot of major policies will change because the Senate will block most of it. And so that has led to an increase since election day. And then Pfizer announced the vaccine would be effective, and it's kind of had an adverse effect on the tech market, which had seen some strength among people being home at work. Companies like Zoom and other online retailers dropped by around 5 to 10% in the last couple of days, just because the prospect of people going back to brick and mortar retail stores. So we've actually seen the Nasdaq drop a little bit since that vaccine news was released. So then this is just a graph of presidential average return for the S&P. And as you can see, on average, it's about 10 to 15%. 2020 is not on there, but 2020's return was about 9% after today. So there's a good mix of Democrat and Republican growth for these areas. Just kind of a interesting graph to show recent performance. And then you've also had this trend recently in Bitcoin. It's skyrocketed in the past month or so, and that surge is somewhat attributed to the devaluing of the dollar. That second graph on the right there shows how the dollar has fallen versus the euro. So people are using Bitcoin to kind of hedge against the devaluing currency. I'm sure most of you know what Bitcoin is. It's just an electronic currency that's not tied to any regulatory body or government. So it's kind of seen as a way to protect value. Like I said, if your currency is devaluing. It's also gained more recent popularity. PayPal said they would start accepting the currency. More and more retail sites are pushing to do so. And it maxed out at, that should be 17,500 during the craze in 2017. So we're approaching 5,400 as of today. So getting back towards that all-time high. And then that last graph on the bottom right is just gold, just so you can see gold is another asset people use to hedge against devalued currencies. Last month we touched on Fat Bear Week. The draft was that night, and it turns out 747 was the winner. We've got a picture of 747 there. Not sure of the official weight, but definitely one fat bear there. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the market update? Okay,
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't think the Georgia Senate race is called yet. So how do you?
It's not completely called, but it's already been, I think, determined. There's 48 Republican, 48 Democrat, and 2 neutral seats. I think the expectation is that the Republican will win at least 1 seat in Georgia. But as of now, I think that's where the market is seeing it going. Obviously, nothing's confirmed yet, but I mean, there's a chance that anything could happen. And so we'll just have to watch that in the coming weeks.
Do you think that if the Senate goes to the Democrat majority, how do you think that will affect the market if they have control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency?
I think that would potentially have a negative impact. There's a lot of talk from Biden about taxing corporations at a higher rate. I've heard a 20% flat rate even being thrown out there. So I think that would have some negative implications if they were to control both the presidency and the Senate and be able to pass some of that legislation. The flip side of that is they'd have stronger odds for stimulus to pass and a larger amount of stimulus. But I think it's already built into play or factored into play that stimulus will pass no matter what. So I think there's a couple sides to it there.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question just on the election thing. So let's say Trump's like appeals take forever to go through. Do we have to wait for those appeals to go through before like Biden takes office? Or will he take office no matter what in January?
I wouldn't think so. Based on the current margins, Biden is ahead in a lot of those swing states. It'd be extremely unlikely to, pretty much impossible for him to come back. I think Michigan was over 100,000. Pennsylvania ended up being like 40 or 60,000. And then Nevada and Arizona had decently wide margins. I don't think it might take a while, but I would think come inauguration day that there'll be a final decision. Again, that's partially just my opinion, though, so nothing's certain. Okay, if there's no more questions there, we'll talk about benefits a little bit. I know a lot of organizations have open enrollment going on right now. Ours actually ended yesterday. So we're going to talk about a couple of the different plans you can choose. There's an HMO plan, which is a health maintenance organization. So in that plan, you choose a primary care provider in your plan's network. There's not out-of-network coverage typically, but there are lower premiums and lower no deductibles for a lot of different, whether it's doctor visits or procedures or whatnot. And then typically there are lower premiums because the physicians in the network usually agree to a lower price, pretty much to ensure there's going to be a patient base. Then we have PPO, which is Preferred Provider Organization. In this one, you don't have to select a PCP or a specialist. And one of the major differences is in an HMO plan, you'd need a referral from your primary care physician to see a specialist for it to be covered by insurance. In the PPO plan, you do not need a referral, but it usually comes with higher premiums and deductibles. And then the one that we're going to dig the most into would be the health savings account. This one has a lot of benefits because it allows you to pre-tax put money into this account, and that account lets you pay for medical expense essentially pre-tax. So these plans, you have to have a high deductible plan in order to utilize an HSA. And most times the PPO plan from the previous slide usually qualifies you for that. Some of the common uses for that HSA would be deductibles, co-pays, co-insurance, and based on my research, some of the things you cannot use it for would be premiums and non-medical expense items. Say a lot of the times there has to be a prescription either by a doctor or it just has to be completely directly medical related. So those are some things that you usually cannot do. Continuing with the HSA, the deductible minimums for 2020 are shown there, $1,400 for individual, $2,800 for family. Obviously, it can change by plan. I think Covenants is higher than that. But there's also a max contribution you can put into the HSA. So for an individual, it's $3,500, and for a family, $7,000. And actually, employers can also make contributions as well, whether they match it or put a set in amount each month. So that does allow the employer to help as well. More information that can be invested. A lot of them you can pretty much do any investment, but it's, because it's used for health expense, you want to have more conservative assets and allocations. You don't want to put your HSA in super risky penny stocks, because then it might, if you lose the value, you're not going to have the cash in there anymore, and you might not be able to pay for some of those medical expenses. So in that, the money goes in tax-free. The money also grows tax-free. So it can be a great retirement account, a different form of retirement account that you can use. Say you max out your Roths and traditionals, you can put this $7,000 there for a family, and it can continue to grow. Non-medical withdrawals after 65 would just be taxed as income. But if you're below the age of 65, it's taxed as income as well as a 20% penalty. So before you retire, you really don't want to use that for non-medical expenses, which is, it's important to save receipts so you can prove that they're medical expenses. And then another good benefit is that you can designate a beneficiary, whether it's a spouse or a child. It allows the account to be passed on, and then whoever it's passed on to could continue to use that that tax-free money to pay for medical expenses. Does anyone have any questions on the HSA?
I do. Just last time you covered like if you just say we're over 50 or so, it's just in the account and we have expenses that we can prove. So how many years can we go back? Did anyone figure that out, or is it unlimited?
That's a good question.
Like, in other words, we haven't taken any out for medical expenses for the last 5 years, even though we've incurred the cost because we want to use it. So if we keep on that path in the next 5 years, do I get to take out for 10 years tax-free because I can prove all the expenses for the last 10 years?
You can go back as far as you have had an HSA.
Okay.
So you have to have that type of like account, and you can go as far back as you wish. But you
Okay.
have to be able to prove it.
Right. But we just get like a statement from Blue Cross every year that shows our out of pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
But it's not, you'll have to look at your particular plan, because it's not just like a direct out of pocket. It's like if you had a high deductible account and then you hit your deductible, so you would have to already pay enough to hit the deductible, then you can go back and cover. Oh, no, I'm wrong. Sorry.
Right.
I misspoke. It can cover all your expenses below the deductible amount, but you have to be in a high deductible plan when that happens.
Right. But we've used up the deductible, and the out of pocket max, ours is $5,400 every year, which we've used more than that, but we've never taken money out. So technically I can get $5,400 for every year I've used it tax free.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions there? This plan is definitely very beneficial for younger couples or individuals as well. I don't think I've made a visit in a long time, so you'd be able to grow that money tax free and then later on be able to use it. So
At what age, what can you when can you start it? Like, do you have to be a certain years old to?
that's a good question. I think, gosh, it's not really sure I know the answer to that one.
Okay, I'll look it up quick, see if I can find some research, but we can move on to other questions.
I know for a lot of businesses or for a lot of employers, you're eligible for the plan if you're a full-time employee, but I don't know if there's an age restriction on that.
Well, I think, can't you take it out any year you have expenses, but if you're over 50, it's all tax free. Isn't that it?
If it's for medical expense, it's tax-free
Right.
forever.
Right.
But after 65, you could withdraw it at your regular income tax rate.
I think it's
okay.
18. You have to be 18.
And you can withdraw after 65, even for non-medical expense, just for whatever you want.
Correct.
Okay, if there's nothing else there, we can move on. We can always touch back on it at the end as well if people have more questions. I'm just going to cover a few extra ones. A flexible savings account, FSA. It's somewhat similar to an HSA, but it doesn't carry over annually, except in the case below, which is $500 of the balance can be carried over annually. So technically you can carry a little bit over, but the max contribution for that is $27.50 So I believe if you carry over that $500, you can get to $3,250. And a lot of times that they'll have like a credit card that your whatever company your account's through, you'll get like a debit card that you can use for those expenses, and then whatever you don't use, you lose at the end of the year aside from that $500. We have a healthcare FSA. So if you're enrolled in an HSA plan, a lot of times you can also enroll in this healthcare FSA. Similar to the regular FSA, except it can be used for less medical expenses. Those are outlined by the IRS, but I think they're all more like dental and vision related expenses that you could use the healthcare FSA for, and that has the same maximum contribution amount. And then finally, we have a dependent care FSA, DCFSA. It has a maximum contribution of $5,000, and it can be used for medical expenses of a dependent. Usually, this covers children under 13, disabled children, and mentally ill individuals. Could be children or adults that are your dependent. And I think this can actually be used for things like if you both work full time. I think like daycare or nannying can be paid out of this account as long as you can prove it and whatnot. I don't know the maximum extent which you can use it for, but again, I think there's just certain cases where you're allowed to use that DCFSA.
Does that carry over, Joj, or is that you have to spend the DCFSA all in 1 year?
That one's got some special rules. It doesn't carry over. There might be that $500. I'm not sure. And the contributions to it are set up pretty weirdly. I think once you set your monthly contribution, it has to stay the same the entire year. So there's a lot of weird rules to that one, and I don't know too much on it, but there's some great resources. I think actually Investopedia was one I was looking at, which had a lot of information. And then we have other accounts. Again, we don't have too much time to touch on all of them, but usually your employer will have a dental, vision, short and long-term disability, the FMLA plan, which I'm sure our family has used quite a bit in the last few years with all the new babies. There's life insurance plans, legal plans, there's accidental injury plans, there's all sorts. So if you do want to find some more information on those, I recommend contacting an employer if you have one, or I guess just the internet would be a great resource to learn more.
And if you're self-employed or in that world, there's plenty of resources. Like there was like 2 guys that were calling me over the last couple months because it's kind of like a sales. They want you to go through them, and they'll be really helpful and answer most or all your questions. So there's definitely resources out there, even if you're not at a company, where they'll help you walk through what's best for you and what makes sense of what you're trying to do within the year.
We did have another question. Looks like someone is curious, if you switch to a non-high deductible plan, what happens to your HSA? And I believe you just can't contribute to it. The account is still active, and you could still reimburse yourself for medical expenses that you incurred while you had the HSA or the high deductible plan. But then if you were to re-enroll in a high deductible plan, you could continue to contribute to the balance of that account.
How many people here have life insurance? Does anyone accept me? I'm assuming I'm the only. You do, Joj, because you're married, probably. Anyone else? like, and Teresa and Ruth, do you still have life insurance?
We have it just on Uncle Lunar, not on me, but it's not a whole lot because we got it when we first got married.
Gotcha.
We have a small policy because with one of our loans, we had to get it in order for them to give us a loan so that it didn't happen. When we were younger though, like your age, we did have a life insurance policy, and we just probably made a wrong decision in doing it. It was not a term, it was an annuity. And so eventually we just stopped contributing to it.
Gotcha.
So
I might have missed it. Joe, is there a general rule of thumb for how much life insurance one ought to purchase?
I don't know the answer to that.
No worries.
We had Nolan on the line.
Did I jump ahead? I'm so sorry. Oh,
no, we weren't going to talk about that. But I don't know.
We could do that next month.
That would be a good one to do. Yeah. The short answer is that there really isn't one good like rule of thumb or one good formula for how much life insurance to carry. It kind of depends on all the factors. So yeah, I think that probably would be something to, if there's somebody who knows a lot about insurance, kind of go through the different decision points on that. Yeah.
Do you normally carry life insurance when you're young or when you're older?
Also kind of depends. Typically, if you're younger and you have dependents, that would be the biggest. Like if you're going for income replacement, and if you're, say, a young couple with a couple of young kids, that you have a lot of future earning power that would need to be replaced if you were to pass away. That's typically one of the main needs for life insurance, but that can also vary. There are some times where people, even when they're older, will carry life insurance for like, you know, even end of life expenses and funeral expenses and stuff like that, to pay estate taxes even sometimes. So there's a lot of different, a lot of different reasons for it, I guess.
If you're newly married, you can also get just enough life insurance to be worth more alive than dead. So your wife won't try to kill you.
You never know with some of these females out here, Smo.
yeah, I was gonna say, are you speaking from experience, Joj? No.
All right. Do we have any questions or other things we'd like to discuss before we get into our final segment here?
No. Well, all right. Again, we apologize for our speaker having to cancel. And hopefully we can go into more in depth, or if anyone knows anything, more about any of the topics covered, or, the topics we kind of mentioned, feel free to share your knowledge with the group. We can always go back to that in a moment. So looking ahead, we're interested in what everyone wants to learn about in next month's topic or future months' topics, and a new club name. So let's start with next month's topics and future month's topics. And we can just kind of, anyone throw out ideas and we'll write stuff down.
Yeah, I think we should put insurance on there for sure.
I would kind of like to know more about how to pick stocks. I mean, obviously, if everyone knew how to pick stocks, we'd all be doing something other than sitting here on a Tuesday night at 8:30 talking to each other. But there's got to be some advice from people, especially young people. I'd like to know what you guys all think are good stocks, not, and that kind of stuff.
That's what I was going to say also, the same thing. Like if you don't watch CNBC, whatever, all day long and hear all that stuff, how do you think of things to invest in? So
Okay. Any other suggestions?
Okay. Well, if there's any more, just send an email or text or whatever. We'll have some other ideas out, but we'll probably send, like we did last time, a survey for everyone to fill out. So we'll have some more ideas that we were thinking of too. But
I got a couple ideas. Maybe one, I don't know how they overlap or what the thought is there, but a little bit of a deeper dive on private equity and venture capital, since we have a good resource in Meisterkratz. Maybe he can present. I also have a buddy in venture capital. I'm sure you all do too, but if you're looking for one. And then between, Brandon and whomever else, just some real estate valuation, how you would evaluate a property and go about that type of thing. It seems like real estate's a fairly accessible commodity that a lot of us are probably going to own at some point or another, or already do. And so that might be something worthwhile.
That'd be really cool. I would enjoy hearing about that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Mark it down. Okay. We have no other suggestions.
I have a question.
Yep.
All your readers out there, where do you get your books? Is there like a book subscription service you use? You just go to Amazon? Talk to me. Cheapest place for books.
Library, they're all free. I'm serious. You wouldn't believe how many books they have. Thomas Township is right by you. They might not have as much, but with Zoll being here, I can pretty much get any book I want. And if they don't have it, I can put a request and they get it from wherever they need to get it.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard that from. That's a good thought.
Blair, I actually get a lot of my textbooks, and you'll see in this next slide, Guido provided a list of like 50. Here, let me go to it now. He provided all those books to read, investing books, and I actually went on Facebook Marketplace and got like 3 of them for $1, $2, and I met him out at SVSU.
Gotcha.
So you should try Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I get all my school books. So
if you're looking for books for like speed and are willing to pay full price, I got a book from Amazon in literally a day. I ordered it yesterday. It came in today, a business book. If you're also, Amazon has like used, if you're willing to wait like 2 weeks, and they're like $3 on Amazon too. So if you just like plan out how you're going to read, that's super cheap. If you're looking for audiobooks, there's an app called Audible, which is like 15 or 14 bucks a month. I think you get a book a month. There's another one called, I'm drawing a blank now, but it's also audio. And it's some subscription service. If you're looking for like car rides and such.
Awesome. Thank you. Now,
this list, is this part of how do we refer back to this list?
Yeah, so we actually had a lot of people reach out and submit lots of resources to us, which we're going to make available. I couldn't get them in this presentation, but when we send out the link to this meeting recording, I will attach all of the health insurance links that Blair provided, and then this PDF right here that Steve Kretz provided for us. So I'll have that PDF and calculator and any other resources that we get. Those will be attached in the email. Yeah, so I actually just finished one of the books, and it was a good read. So I would suggest trying to find, if anyone, we could do like a book trade, or if anyone wants to read the books, if you've read these books and are looking for someone, I would ask this group, maybe even Steve, he might have a lot of them, or Brandon. No, Brandon has a ton of books. So I would maybe Blair ask around if you're looking for any of these books specifically. But yeah, all these resources will be available. I will send out an email hopefully before the end of this week, which has the recording and all these links attached. So.
I would also ask, Blair got me tuned into a couple podcasts of medical type subjects that I never would have known about. So if anyone has similar podcasts relating to finances, if you could also put that, Anna, in the resources so that we could maybe, when we go on our walks or exercise or do whatever we do when we listen to podcasts, we could maybe use that as a resource as well.
Okay. Yep. As soon as everyone who watches this will see that, and I will also send out a Google Forms, and on the bottom I'll add just a suggestion comment or box where you can add podcasts or any other books.
Maybe we could start like a shared Google sheet or something. So, because there's like a lot of books I know that aren't necessarily finance, but are business related or podcasts. It's maybe not directly with this group, but other people in the group might like them.
Okay.
Blair, just back to your question too. There's one other one. I'll have to look at the name and I can send it out, but you can actually get audiobooks on like online library. It's like a app that's like a library online. So.
Okay, great.
Also, MSU library, you can get any of those books online if you have the MSU login, which if someone needs, you can ask me for my login or Christina, or we have hundreds of logins. So if you find something on the MSU library, which is a really good resource too, just let us know and we can get down there.
I think my email
Fantastic.
still works for the library, so yours might still too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So do we have any?
All right, who's joining me for the sauna session? All right, let's go. Buco, I know you're in.
I would so need a sauna session. I would be in. All right. Well, if we have any other questions or comments, concerns, say them now. If not, we will catch up in email and see you guys a month from first month.
Thank you guys. Thanks for doing it. Appreciate it.
Thanks for putting it
Yeah,
together.
no problem.
See everybody.
Thanks, guys.
All right, see you, everybody.
Bye.
Let's go. You can probably stop the recording now.
I'm gonna wait for Linda to leave.